This is AFVN, Channel 11 Saigon, Channel 78 Canto.
Good evening. The International Commission of Control and Supervision, nearly a week behind schedule in getting truce teams into the field, announced that Vietnam observers will begin duties Monday at 7 regional locations specified in the Paris Peace Agreement. The locations are Hue and Da Nang in the northern quarter of South Vietnam, Pleiku in the central highlands, Phan Thiet on the central coast, Bien Hoa in the Saigon region, and My Tho and Can Tho in the Mekong Delta. Members of the four-party Joint Military Commission will also be traveling widely in Vietnam. The members of the Commission, the United States, the Republic of Vietnam, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, and the Provisional Revolutionary Government will be wearing orange armbands with a numeral 4 on them. They will also carry special ID cards. Commission motor and air vehicles will also be specially marked. Surface vehicles will have an orange flag with the number 4 on it. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft will each have sets of 4 orange stripes painted on them. Members of the four-party Military Commission are entitled to protection and assistance of all parties to the agreement. Fighting in South Vietnam continued to slow, and the Saigon Command this morning reported no major battles for the first time since the ceasefire. Reported violations of the armistice totaled 108 in the 18-hour period ending this morning, down from 146 the day before. Government sources reported the capture of 2 communist documents, one stating that the war would continue and the ceasefire was signed only to induce the U.S. to withdraw. The other ordered communist units along the central coast to keep fighting and block highways. Last Sunday morning, there was heavy fighting near the mouth of the Qua Viet River northeast of Quang Tri. We have a report tonight from CBS newsman Foster Davis.
Say they launched a last-minute offensive and reached their objective precisely 2 minutes before the ceasefire began. Then they say the North Vietnamese counterattacked. There were no outside observers, so the truth of it is unclear. But it is clear that the vital mouth of the Qua Viet River will be one of the most ticklish places for the international supervisors. There are National Liberation Front flags in place, in territory the Marines consider theirs. So Marines move up and place their own flag nearby, then dig in. There are more National Liberation Front flags planted beside destroyed Marine tanks. And there are the wounded, men the South Vietnamese say shed their blood after the guns were to have fallen silent. Foster Davis, CBS News.
South Vietnam's envoy in Paris says preliminary contacts with the Viet Cong will be at a relatively low level. In a Lunar New Year speech, President Thieu disclosed that he has ordered envoy Pham Dong Lam to begin negotiations no later than Tuesday. Lam, the South Vietnamese ambassador in Paris, says he has no immediate plans to participate in the talks on a political solution for South Vietnam. Shrouded in secrecy, Vice President Spiro Agnew's special jet plane left Bangkok today for Vientiane, Laos. Agnew left to Thailand after promising continued military and economic aid to the country's leaders. The Vice President has more talks ahead of him with officials in Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Jakarta. The Pentagon got a pleasant surprise this week when it learned that Marine PFC Ronald L. Ridgway was not killed in Vietnam combat, but was held prisoner by the enemy. Major General Daniel James made the announcement.
The prisoners of war released by North Vietnam on January 27, 1973 contained the name of PFC Ronald L. Ridgway, U.S. Marine Corps, said he was captured on February 25th, 1968. The name and personal data corresponds with Marine Corps records on Ridgway, who had been determined to be dead, with remains recovered and returned to the United States for burial.
The body thought to be Ridgway's was buried in a mass grave at the Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis. At the time of the burial, Ridgway's family was told he was one of 9 Marines ambushed near Quezon during the 1968 Tet Offensive. According to the Pentagon, a casualty count taken shortly after the offensive showed there were 9 bodies. It said that although positive individual identification was impossible, Ridgway was believed to be among the dead. The news of Ridgway's POW status was delivered to his mother by phone this weekend. Mrs. Mildred Ridgway, a nurse's aide in Houston, Texas, talked with CBS newsman Richard Roth about that phone call.
I said, my son's alive, and he said yes, but he is a POW. I knew what the call was whenever it came through.
Were you waiting for a call then?
In a sense, I was, because I didn't expect my son to be dead.
But it's been 4.5 years. You've heard nothing, and all indications were that he had been killed near Quezon.
I know this is the way it appeared, but I never gave up hope on my son. I always thought my son was alive. And it took time for it to come about. I wasn't surprised over the call.
You had gone to a man's funeral in St. Louis. You had been told by the military that he had been killed in an ambush, and you said, despite this, you had known, not just a matter of hope, you had known your son was alive?
Yes, I went to that service, but I also said that my son was alive when I went. I told them then that my son was still alive.
Why did you feel this way?
Intuition, I don't know exactly what you call it, but I never gave up hope on my son. I just felt that God was taking care of him, and like he does all of us.
The U.S. Command issued an official strength summary listing 21,800 American servicemen as of Wednesday. A spokesman says American troops are being withdrawn at the rate of about 400 a day. Under the current schedule, the United States will meet the March 28th deadline. The Army has filed charges of mistreatment against a staff sergeant at Fort Dix, New Jersey. The charges are said to stem from the death of a private who collapsed during a basic training exercise. A spokesman says the charges against Staff Sergeant John Layton will be thoroughly investigated to determine their truth and if they warrant a trial. The Navy has discharged some 3,000 alleged troublemakers, both black and white, and another 3,000 more may be dismissed by the end of the month. Navy officials say the purge follows a series of racial incidents and shipboard disturbances. Elliott Richardson took over this week as the new Secretary of Defense. We have a film report tonight on ceremonies at the Pentagon from CBS.
Staff, present. Ho!
President Nixon presented his fresh approach to Congress today in the first of several written messages to Congress, which he's substituting for the traditional State of the Union speech. Anticipating congressional opposition, the president tried to enlist the support of legislators in plans to cut federal programs and encourage state and individual initiative. Details of his plans will be outlined in successive reports, which the president will send to Capitol Hill. The president did assess the nation's condition at the outset of 1973 as economically strong, militarily secure, and most important of all, a peace at last after a long and trying war. Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill reacted with polite skepticism to Nixon's plans. House Leader Carl Albert phrased it this way: I do not subscribe to the philosophy that the White House knows best. Still to be settled is the question of the executive's constitutional authority to withhold federal spending ordered by Congress. House Republican leader Gerald Ford sided with the president's move to curb excessive federal spending of taxpayers' funds. The president these past few months has adopted a controversial program of refusing to spend funds appropriated by Congress, a policy that's made not a few congressmen angry. A Senate committee held hearings on the matter this week. CBS newsman Barry Seraphim has that story.
Bill by North Carolina Democratic Senator Sam Ervin, which would require the president to justify decisions to impound authorized funds and allow Congress 60 days, in the words of one senator, to unimpound them. But leadoff witness Ralph Nader thought the bill should be tougher, permitting not even a temporary presidential freeze on approved spending.
You've been talking about this in the congressional record for years, and the White House has been ignoring these warnings for years. And the process now is no longer episodic. It's institutionalized. It's arrogant. It's overt. It's planned. And I think that this is the time, I think, when Congress is going to have to make a very determined and explicit stand.
Senator Hubert Humphrey, appearing in support of the Ervin bill when pressed about the past administration, said he believed President Johnson stretched his authority and went beyond the law in impounding funds for various programs.
I've served over there on that other side, and I've sat with budget directors and with people who are deeply concerned about this country. I don't say that the present president and his advisors are not concerned about it, about this nation. Of course they are. They have a point of view. They have a way that they think that they're best serving this country. But in this instance, we have representative government. And I believe that the appropriation process and the matter of public policy rests in the Congress of the United States. And we're either going to fish or cut bait, or we're going to look worse every year. And what is being done at the Office of the Management and Budget Management will become a fixed pattern. And the next president of the United States, whoever he may be, will just build on what this president has done. And this Congress will look more and more like it's unnecessary, unneeded, and excess baggage.
At the end of the day, the subcommittee asked the Comptroller General for legal rulings on President Nixon's decisions to impound funds, one more step toward a constitutional confrontation with the White House. Barry Seraphim, CBS News, Washington.
Miami Beach police have a man in custody in connection with today's explosion in a crowded cafeteria. Fire officials say the explosion was caused by a Molotov cocktail hurled into the cafeteria. At least 90 persons are reported injured, many of them elderly. An employee says he recognized the man who threw the container as a former employee of the cafeteria. Police say it appears 10 persons may have been injured critically, and a hospital spokesman says about 50 persons are being treated for various degrees of burns and injuries. Police in Eagle Grove, Iowa estimated 8 to 10 patrons and at least 5 employees were in a local restaurant when an explosion ripped through that establishment, leaving an undetermined number dead. The explosion also affected an adjoining business establishment and apartments above the restaurant. An unknown number of persons were in the apartments. Rescuers were still unable to get into the restaurant called the Chatterbox to determine if there are any survivors. A fierce fire was started by the blast, which occurred during the dinner hour shortly after 8 a.m. Saigon time. The latest hospital statement indicates Senator John Stennis is resting well and his vital signs are good. But 3 days after he was shot by robbers outside his Washington, D.C. home, Stennis is still listed in very serious condition. The prognosis still is guarded. His temperature was a bit higher than normal, and it's still too early to tell when the 71-year-old Mississippian can be considered out of danger. A number of ugly incidents in New York City in recent weeks has forced city police there to take extra security precautions to protect their men. CBS has this film report.
With service revolvers hidden under street clothing, a walkie-talkie, and an unmarked car, this backup team is ready to go. They're volunteers working overtime to protect their uniformed buddies from possible ambush.
Well, this is an operation whereby men in civilian clothes in civilian cars would be following radio cars, which are responding to runs and also on patrol. In the event that they do need us, we'll be there to back them up. And if they do respond to a run, we will also back them up, but at a distance and trying to be unobserved.
Twice in less than a week, 4 patrolmen have been caught in the crossfire of an ambush, and it's left many police officers uneasy.
A federal judge in Los Angeles rejected a defense motion to dismiss all charges against Daniel Ellsberg and Anthony Russo in the Pentagon Papers case. Judge Matt Byrne said there was no precedent for throwing out an indictment because the prosecution failed to give the defense information bearing on the possible innocence of the defendants. The court also refused to declare a second mistrial in the case. The federal judge who handled the Watergate case says some people other than the 7 defendants in the case may have known large sums were being sent for political espionage against the Democrats. And Judge John Sirica hopes an upcoming Senate investigation will get to the bottom of it. Meanwhile, G. Gordon Liddy and James McCord, who were found guilty of carrying out a burglary at Democratic headquarters, remain in jail. They've been unable to raise the $100,000 bond. They're awaiting sentencing. Italy has been challenging France's leadership role in the wine industry for some years now, but this year Italy has suffered a bad setback. CBS newsman Winston Burdett reports.
Wine growers of Italy, 1972, the worst vintage year the country has had in a decade. A poor grape harvest nearly everywhere, even in the warm south, a 30% drop in wine production. And in some vineyards of northern Italy, in Piedmont, where many premium wines come from, a staggering deficit of 50%. It was the year the Italian sun failed. Without sun, the grapes are small, scarce, and sour. Without sun, they lack sugar, and without sugar, they lack alcohol. A heavy blow for many of the 300,000 Italians who work in the vineyards, especially for the small producers and the sharecroppers. They have their cows and their chickens, but for their livelihood, they depend directly and chiefly on their wine harvest. It's been a disaster this year. It began badly and it went badly. Too much water, too much rain, little wine, and what there was of it was no good. Mamma mia, how bad it was. The grapes looked good, but they were tasteless. A hilltop villa in central Italy, in the heart of the region that produces the aristocrat of Italian wines, Chianti. A typical estate with its gardens and castle and 100 acres of vineyard, situated in the oldest and finest grape-growing area. In the wine cellar of the castle, rows and rows of huge oaken casks, each of them holding some 4,000 bottles of the premium wine. All of them carefully tended so that no spoiling air gets in. The degree of alcohol, the periods of aging in the vats, the rules of production, all are prescribed by Italian law. Italy is a pacemaker in setting strict standards of production, and the bad harvest is bringing new pressure for a relaxation of the rules. French and German wine growers are permitted to add sugar to their premium wines to increase the alcohol content in a bad year. The Italians, no. Many quality wines of the 72 vintage have failed to reach the 12 grades of alcohol that the law requires, and many producers have had to declassify their weak wines and sell them as ordinary, unregistered, unguaranteed, and unlabeled table wine. And what of Italy's own consumers, for whom wine is a staff of life, as essential and as natural and as universal as bread and cheese and pasta? Well, the Italians will not go thirsty this year. There will still be plenty of ordinary and quality wine to go around, even though they may have to dip rather deeply into their stocks. But in one important way, every Italian family will feel the difference, and it will hurt. The price of wine each year goes up about 10% in Italy. This year, with the lower output, the experts grimly predict that it will jump by at least 18 to 20%. And once prices go up, who ever heard of their coming down again? Winston Burdett, CBS News, Rome.
A burst of automatic weapons fire has cut down 5 Protestant teenagers in the strife-torn Northern Ireland capital of Belfast. Police report 1 boy is dead and 4 others wounded in the terrorist attack. 3 men reportedly are being held for questioning. Meanwhile, there are reports of rioting in a Protestant section of the city, and 2 men are said to have been killed in terrorist-style executions. The latest rash of killings has brought the 3.5-year death toll in Northern Ireland to more than 700. Authorities fear the violence may signal a bloody showdown between the Irish Republican Army on the Roman Catholic side and the Protestant militants of the Ulster Defense Association. That's news. Jerry Elliott's next with sports.
Happiness is a warm puppy. The warm puppy, death if he has rabies. One little nip that just breaks the skin from that cuddly little scamp, and you are dead without prompt medical treatment. There's only one known case of recovery from rabies once its symptoms appeared, and that recovery is only partial. There are no guarantees but one: certain death without treatment. Want to pet the puppy?
Young Tom Watson will carry a 4-stroke lead into tomorrow's third round of the Hawaiian Open Golf Tourney at Honolulu. Watson, a 23-year-old in his second tour on the Pro Tour, broke from a tightly bunched field with a 7-under par 65 in today's second round. He has a 36-hole total of 11 under par 133. Japan's Mashi Ozaka is alone in second place at 7 under 137. Orville Moody, Doug Sanders, and John Schlee are another stroke back at 138. Elsewhere in golf, Dale Unser and Leroy Kelly take a 2-stroke lead into tomorrow's American Airlines Golf Classic in San Juan. Unser, an outfielder with the Philadelphia Phillies, and Kelly, a running back with the Cleveland Browns, teamed up for the best ball score of 14 under par 57 in today's opening round. Last year's winners from Baltimore, Jim Palmer of the Orioles and former Colt wide receiver Willie Richardson, are second at 59. On the tennis scene, Marty Reason of Evanston, Illinois will face Australian Ken Rosewall in tomorrow's semifinals of the World Championship Tennis Tournament in Milan, Italy. Tom Gorman of Seattle and Roscoe Tanner of Lookout Mountain, Tennessee are paired against each other in the other semifinal match. In the women's Virginia Slims tournament at Bethesda, Maryland, top-seeded Margaret Court will go against Janet Newberry, and second-seeded Rosemary Casals will play Australian Curry Melville in the semifinal matches. Well, the National Football League held its annual collegiate draft this past week in New York, and there were plenty of surprises. CBS's Richard O'Brien was there.
The 38th Annual National Football League selection meeting is now in session. First choice, first round, Houston Oilers.
And with that announcement, the Houston Oilers went to work making a final decision as to who would be number one. After 10 minutes of telephone discussions between Houston and New York, the announcement was made.
Houston Oilers select first choice in the first round, John Matuzak, defensive end, University of Tampa.
Sports attorney Bob Wolf, who has a knack for representing top draft choices, talked to Ed Gorin about his newest client.
And he's such an exciting athlete. He's a great football player and has an unbelievable build for a human being. I don't know, he's 6'8", 280 pounds, and he has a 54-inch chest and a 34-inch waist, and is a tremendous athlete, and I think it was a wise choice.
As his agent, what kind of a bankroll will John Matuzak have?
Well, as his attorney, I must say that I think that John Matuzak will probably get the highest contract in the history of any lineman in the history of professional ball, because this was, I feel, the finest group of athletes that have come out of college in many, many years, and they've chosen him as the best of them all.
The Baltimore Colts secured the second choice yesterday in a trade with New Orleans. With Johnny Unitas gone and number one quarterback Marty Domrez looking on, Pete Rozelle announced the Colts' choice.
The Baltimore Colts select as New Orleans' choice through a previous trade agreement on the first round, Burt Jones, quarterback, LSU.
Jones goes 6'3" and weighs 205 pounds. At LSU, he completed better than 50% of his passes. A classic drop-back passer, Jones is expected to fill the void left by the trade of Unitas to San Diego. While in past years, quarterbacks were gobbled up early in the draft, Jones was the only quarterback selected in the first round today. The Philadelphia Eagles, with 2 first-round picks, decided to beef up their offensive line with their first selection.
Philadelphia Eagles, first round selection, Jerry Sizemore, tackle, Texas.
Sizemore was a 2-time All-America offensive tackle at Texas. He wears number 76, and at 6'4", 250 pounds, he has the size for the pros. He's said to be a devastating one-on-one blocker and should start immediately if he can learn pro-type pass blocking. The New England Patriots were also looking to strengthen their offensive line. The Patriots had the 4th selection in the draft.
The New England Patriots' first-round choice, John Hanna, guard, Alabama.
Hanna Hanna, like Sizemore, is an offensive tackle. He was an All-American at Alabama, and he too has the size for the pros. Number 73 weighs 275 pounds and stands 6'3". His college coach, Bear Bryant, calls Hanna the best lineman he's ever coached. Richard O'Brien, CBS News, reporting.
In auto sports, the first of 12 races on the 1973 World Manufacturers Championship Series will get underway tomorrow with a grueling 24-hour endurance test at Daytona Beach, Florida. England's Derek Bell and Howdy Ganley, driving a John Wyer Mirage, hold the pole position. A French Matra, driven by Henry Pescalero and Francois Servet, has the number 2 slot. In track and field, the indoor track and field records could continue to fall tomorrow as top athletes gather for the Seattle Invitational and the Knights of Columbus meet in Cleveland, Ohio. 5 world record holders, including pole vaulter Steve Smith and shot putter Al Feuerbach, will compete in the Seattle meet. Swedish pole vaulter Shaylee Zaxon and Olympic champion Dave Waddle head the program at Cleveland. Wayne Muloin and Doug Brindley scored within 25 seconds of each other late in the third period to spark the Cleveland Crusaders to a 5-3 victory over the Philadelphia Blazers today in the WHA. In other WHA games on tap, the New England Whalers beat the Los Angeles Sharks 3-1. The Chicago Cougars defeated Ottawa 4-1, and Alberta edged Winnipeg 4-3. The National Hockey League, incidentally, was idle today. In basketball notes, Baltimore and Atlanta, the 2 top clubs in the NBA's Central Division, came away with victories against the Atlantic Division leaders today. Pete Maravich connected for 37 points, including a game-winning free throw with less than a minute remaining, as the Hawks edged the Boston Celtics 100-99. The Bullets, meanwhile, ran their winning streak to 4 games with an 89-77 triumph over the New York Knicks. Elsewhere in the NBA today, Milwaukee presented Coach Larry Costello with his 250th NBA victory by beating Buffalo 114-108. Detroit handed Philadelphia its 14th straight setback, 114-104. The Los Angeles Lakers routed Phoenix 126-109, and Seattle turned back Chicago 118-104. In the ABA's 3-point field goal played an important role in Memphis Tam's 114-110 victory over Utah today. Veteran guard George Lehman, who recently rejoined the club, hit for 32 points, including 4 straight 3-pointers. In other ABA games, Carolina defeated Denver 113-105. Kentucky beat San Diego 118-106, and the New York Nets topped the Dallas 106-93. In college ball, UCLA will put their 61-game winning streak on the line tomorrow against the Trojans of Southern California in a Pac-8 encounter. And the Bruins of UCLA set a new collegiate record for the number of consecutive wins last week when they defeated Notre Dame. Haywood Hale Bruin has this report tonight on the Bruin star of yesteryear.
Time was when Lou Alcindor, greatest of college basketball players, meant UCLA as he played a major part in winning 47 straight games and 3 straight national championships. Now Alcindor is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of Milwaukee, and UCLA is a legend of so many layers that the 4 letters of its name are their own trumpets of triumph. Successions of stars have soared through successions of victories, and UCLA was today 2 years from its last defeat. This afternoon in South Bend, dark-jerseyed UCLA, led by Big Bill Walton, number 32, now perhaps the greatest of college players, scored a 61st straight win, an 82-63 triumph over Notre Dame, last team to beat them. The winning streak is the longest in college basketball history, one over the 60 achieved by Bill Russell in San Francisco in the 1950s. From the way in which Walton and his teammates dominated the game from the beginning, the record may have a lot of growing time ahead of it. Coach John Wooden's men handled the basketball with the kind of dégagé finesse that professional coaches dream about and only occasionally see. And their attack had the perfect mesh of a veteran repertory company doing a familiar play. The tensions of the record seemed to leave them calm and easy, and at game's end, John Wooden received the game ball destined for the Hall of Fame as if Notre Dame's Digger Phelps were giving him a practice sphere. This is Haywood Hale Bruin.
That's news and sports on Saturday, February 3rd. I'm Army Specialist Bob Morecock. On behalf of Army Specialist Jerry Elliott and the rest of the staff here at AFVN, have a very pleasant evening.
AFVN News is compiled from commercial and military news agencies.
Up-to-date news and sports. Stay in touch with American Forces Television. Channel 11 Saigon, Channel 78 Canton.